Hello and good morning friends, welcome to the CEC-UGC live lecture. Dear friends, with our ongoing series on microeconomics, today we would be conducting a 27th lecture in the series. In the first session, we would be talking on modern theory of rent, whereas in the second session, we would be discussing on different concepts of wages. And for this very discussion, we have once again with us in our studios, Dr. Kamlesh Ghakkar. Dr. Kamlesh Ghakkar is a professor in Institute of Management Studies and Research, Maharishi Dayananda University, Rohtak. Dr. Ghakkar has immense experience. She has spent almost maximum years of her life in teaching in academics. She has written numerous books as well as a number of her articles have been published in various national and international journals. Number of students are pursuing their PhD under her able guidance. So let's welcome our guest, Dr. Kamlesh Ghakkar. Dr. Ghakkar, welcome to the EduSec lecture.
Thank you, Geetika. Hello viewers. Today we'll be discussing about what is the modern theory of rent. We have already done Ricardian theory of rent, according to which rent accrues only to land. But the modern economists are of the view that rent can accrue to any factor of production. Actually, the modern theory of rent is an extension of the Ricardian theory of rent. Ricardo was of the view that demand for land is a derived demand and depends upon the price of corn. The supply of land is completely fixed for the society as a whole. The higher the price of corn, the more profitable it will be to grow corn. So demand for corn land will rise and a higher price will be paid for its use. Thus, the rent will also rise. Ricardo assumed that land is used only for the production of corn. Therefore, the opportunity cost of cultivation of corn on land is zero. As there is no other use of land, nothing has to be paid to prevent land from transferring it to use other than growing corn. So, according to Ricardo, rent is a surplus over and above what is necessary to keep it in its present use. Thus, rent, which was the term for the use of land, became the term for a surplus payment to a factor over and above what was necessary to keep it in its present use. Mrs. John Robinson defined rent in these terms. Such surplus income can be earned by any factor of production. According to Benham, economic rents are the sum paid to the factors which need not to be paid in order to retain the factors in the industry. According to Boulding, economic rent is the payment to a factor in excess of the minimum amount necessary to keep that factor in its present occupation. In Mrs. Robinson's viewpoint, the minimum payment that has to be made to a particular factor of production to retain it in its present use is known as transfer earnings. The difference between earnings actually received by a certain unit of factor and its transfer price is its rent from the point of view of the industry. According to Stigler, the rent of a factor is the excess of its return in the best use over its possible return in other uses. Thus, rent is equal to actual earnings minus transfer earnings. In most cases, actual earnings of a factor of production contain both the transfer earnings and rent. We will take the three cases. Number one is all income is rent. Suppose a factor of production is totally specific. It can be used only for one purpose and nothing else. When it cannot be used for any other purpose, this means its transfer earnings are equal to 0. So, whatever it earns in the present occupation becomes the total rent, because we know rent is equal to actual earning minus transfer earning. Supposing a computer programmer can only operate on the computer and he does not know anything else. So, his transfer earning or opportunity cost is 0. Supposing he is earning rupees 20,000 per month. So, this earning of computer program is also the rent, because rent is actual earning minus transfer earning, or rupees 20,000 minus 0 would be also equal to the rupees 20,000. So, in this case all income is rent. Another case can be where the rent is 0. Supposing the factor is non-specific, it can be used for any purpose. In that case, its actual earning and transfer earnings are the same. Supposing a person who is working as a chowkidar is unskilled. He earns rupees 3,000 per month for his work. If he works as a laborer on some construction site or as a helper in some shop, he gets rupees 3,000 per month for his job. In this case, his transfer earnings are rupees 3,000. He is earning rupees 3,000 in his present occupation, so his rent is 0, because actual earning minus transfer earning is equal to 0, because 3,000 minus 3,000 will come to 0. So, this was the case of 0 rent when a factor is non-specific, that it can be used for any purpose. Now, we will take the third case in which income is partly rent. Here we know that a factor may not be completely specific or completely non-specific. So, this is the extreme when we say a factor is completely specific or completely non-specific, but actually the factor is in between these two. There is specificity of to some extent, but not completely specific. In that case, actual earnings contain a part of the transfer earnings as well as rent. Supposing we take the case of a university lecturer, he can also work as a school teacher. Supposing in the university system he is getting rupees 40,000 as a lecturer per month, but if he is working as a school teacher, there he gets rupees 30,000 as a school teacher. So, his transfer earnings are rupees 30,000. So, rent will be equal to actual earnings minus transfer earnings. So, actual earning here are 40,000 and 30,000 is the transfer earning. So, this means 10,000 is the rent for the university lecturer in this case. So, in this way we can find out in any case what is the economic rent earned by any factor of production. What it can earn in its next best use is its opportunity cost, and if actual earnings are greater than that, then that factor will be getting rent. Thus, we see that all factors can get rent, not only land. So, rent is closely related to specificity. Greater the element of specificity, lower the transfer earnings, and greater is the element of rent in real income. And non-specificity of a factor of production increases the element of transfer earnings in the real income and reduces the element of rent. Now we will see how a factor's rent depends upon its elasticity of supply. Here also we will take 3 cases. Number 1 is when the supply of a factor of production is perfectly inelastic. When the factor of production is having perfectly inelastic supply, then naturally this means that this factor is specific, just as we can take the case of land for the society as a whole. Its supply is perfectly inelastic. It cannot be increased at all. And in this case, we will show this in figure 1. We have taken demand and supply on x-axis, and on y-axis we are taking price. Supply of land is fixed or of any factor, that is OM, and it remains constant. So MC is the supply curve which is parallel to y-axis. Now whatever may be the demand, but supply is not going to change. DD is the demand curve, and accordingly the price set is OP. So the actual earnings of the factor are OPEM. In this case, because the supply remains constant, whatever may be the price, transfer earnings of the factor are 0, or its opportunity cost is 0. So the whole actual earning will become rent. So in this case, actual earnings are equal to economic rent, because rent is equal to AE minus TE, and we know TE is equal to 0. So rent is equal to actual earnings. So here in this case, OPEM is also the economic rent accruing to the factor of production. And we know that whatever income is earned by the land, that becomes rent, because its supply is perfectly inelastic and its transfer earnings are 0, and it has been assumed here that it has no other use except for the production of corn. The second case can be perfectly elastic supply of a factor of production. When the factor of production is completely non-specific and it gets equal return in all the uses where it can be put, the supply of factor is completely elastic, and in this case the supply curve will be parallel to x-axis. If the earnings of the factor are decreased in the present occupation, it will be transferred to some other use. In case of the perfectly elastic supply, because the factor can be used for any type of the use, so its transfer earnings are equal to actual earnings, and in this case rent would be equal to 0, because we know rent is actual earning minus transfer earning, both are equal, so there is 0 rent, and this is shown in figure 2. On x-axis we have taken demand and supply of a factor of production, and price is shown on y-axis. Supply curve is perfectly elastic, so PS is parallel to x-axis, and DD is the demand curve. So price is determined by the intersection of demand and supply curve at E. Here the price is OP per unit and total units employed are OM. So OPEM is the actual earning of the factor. This is also equal to the transfer earnings. So both are equal. So in this case rent is equal to 0. So we have seen that when there is a perfectly elastic supply of a factor of production, it will not earn any rent. Rent will be zero in that case. Now actually we have taken the two extremes. One is the perfectly elastic supply and the other is perfectly inelastic supply. And in between there is less elastic supply of a factor of production, which is neither perfectly elastic nor perfectly inelastic. In that case, there are transfer earnings and actual earnings are greater than transfer earning. So that is why rent is there. So it will depend upon the type of supply curve, and this has been shown in figure 3. In figure 3, you can see that demand and supply of a factor of production are shown on x-axis and price is shown on y-axis. DD is the demand curve and SS is the supply curve. The portion below the supply curve tells us what is the opportunity cost or what is the transfer earnings of a factor. Now if the price is OP1, we see that the transfer earnings are area below this supply curve OS and this M1, while the actual earnings are OP1 and M1 and this point. And when the price is OP2, you find that actual earning increase as well as transfer earnings also increase. And we take the case of OP3 because here the demand and supply are intersecting each other. So we have taken the case of OP3. Now what is the transfer earning here? Here the transfer earnings are O, M3, E and S. These are the transfer earnings or the opportunity cost of the factor of production. This must be paid to the factor to keep it in the present use. But the actual earnings are OP3, E and M3. So what is the rent? We know rent is equal to actual earning minus transfer earning. So OP3 EM3 minus OS EM3 and you get SEP3. This is the rent accruing to this factor of production. So you can see that this is the area above the supply curve and below the line P3E. This is the rent accruing to the factor of production. So this way we can find out what is the rent accruing to any factor of production, and if its supply is inelastic, we will find that actual earnings are greater than the transfer earnings and rent is accruing to the factor of production. So we have seen here that it is not only the land which is getting rent, but any factor of production can have rent provided the supply is inelastic. In case of perfectly elastic supply, there would not be any rent, but in other cases rent will be accruing to any factor of production. So this way, this is taking into account the demand and supply, and here rent enters price. So we have seen that the more the curve is elastic, the lower is the element of rent in the total earnings and higher is the element of opportunity cost. So you have seen that when the supply is perfectly inelastic, entire earning is rent, and when the supply is perfectly elastic, entire earning is transfer earning, so the rent is zero. Now we will also study another concept, that is Casa Rent. The concept of Casa Rent was given by Alfred Marshall. This concept of Casa Rent is an extension of the Ricardian concept of the rent to the short run earnings of the capital equipment such as machinery, building, etc., which are in inelastic supply in the short run. Supply of land is perfectly inelastic to change in its price, and therefore its earnings depend mainly on demand conditions. In the short run, the fixed capital equipment as machinery is perfectly inelastic in supply, and cost of its production is not relevant once it has been produced. Thus, in the short period, the earnings of the specialized capital equipment depend upon its demand and are therefore similar to land rent, and it is called Casa Rent by Marshall. So, what we can say that Casa Rent is actually the income earned by the fixed factor of production or by fixed capital, etc., because that capital cost is there. Even if that is not covered, even then the firm will go on working. So, whatever earnings are there on the fixed capital, that is Casa Rent, but this fixed capital is fixed only in the short period. So, it will disappear in the long run, because in the long run the supply of fixed capital can also be increased. Actually, the Casa Rent can be calculated if we know what is the total revenue earned by a firm and what is the total variable cost. We have already done in various lectures that a firm in the short run must cover its variable cost, but it can suffer the loss of fixed cost, because if it stops producing, loss of fixed cost will be there even in that case. So, it must get its variable cost. So, whatever a firm is earning over and above the variable cost is called Casa Rent, and that is the earnings on account of the fixed capital, and this we can see in the figure also. So, in figure 4 we have taken output on x-axis, on y-axis we have taken price, cost and revenue. You know, in case of perfect competition, price is determined in the market by demand and supply, and each firm can sell the product at the given price. So, we have taken average cost, average variable cost, marginal cost is cutting AC and AVC at their minimum points. Now, we can find out what are the profits for a firm. When the price is OP1, then AR1 is equal to MR1, and here the equilibrium is at E. We know the equilibrium conditions. Marginal cost is equal to marginal revenue, and MC cuts MR from below. So, at point E, total revenue is OP1 E M1, but average variable cost, and from that we find out what is the total variable cost, that is OM1 TQ. This is the total variable cost. So, the gap between the total revenue and total variable cost is P1 E T and Q. This is the rent accruing to the firm. When the price falls to OP2, here you see that price is less than the average cost, but still it is more than the average variable cost. At this point, the rent is OP2 L J T K and J. This is the rent going to the firm when the price is OP2, and if the price further falls to OP3 or which is also equal to OJ, here the firm is getting only average variable cost. The whole of the fixed cost is lost here. But the firm will go on working because it knows that even if it stops producing, loss of the fixed cost would be there. So here the price is just equal to AVC. So in this case, when price is equal to OP3, there is no Casa Rent. So thus we have seen that Casa Rent is the difference between total revenue minus total variable cost. So what you have seen, if the price falls below OP3, the firm will stop producing. So we can say that Casa Rent can never be negative. Thus Casa Rent can be more than fixed cost, it can be equal to it or less than it. In case Casa Rent is greater than fixed cost, the firm earns profits. If it is less than fixed cost, the firm suffers a loss. And when Casa Rent is just equal to the fixed cost, the firm earns only normal profit. So, dear viewers, we have seen how the modern rent is determined and how the Casa Rent is there, and Casa Rent is only in the short period, it cannot be negative. So, it is different from the economic rent which is for the long period. Thank you. Hello viewers, in this session we are going to discuss about the different concepts of wages. You know, in economics, any mental or physical work which we are doing for the sake of money is called labor, and whatever a labor is getting as a reward for its services is known as wages. So wage is a payment made by producer or employer to the worker for the services rendered by him in the production process. From the point of view of the employer, wage is a payment, while from the point of view of the worker, it is income. Laborers work in close cooperation with other factors like capital, enterprise, etc. in the production process. So, wages can also be defined as the share of workers in the joint production carried out by the various factors of production. Sometimes workers don't sell their labor to any employer and carry out production according to their own plans. They work as self-employed. In such cases, wages cannot be distinguished from profits. Some economists have chosen to define wages as a monetary payment for the services of labor. Wages should mean the reward to labor, whatever the mode of payment. Now we will see what is the difference between nominal or money wage and real wage? The concept of nominal or money wage is quite simple. The amount of money paid to the worker by the employer in return for his services is the money wage. Money wage is paid to the worker at a regular interval, say daily wages or weekly wages or monthly wages. Or you can say, supposing a person is getting a salary of rupees 25,000 per month, so that is his money wage. But what is real wage? Real wages are expressed in terms of goods and services which can be purchased with the money wages, and along with it all the facilities which a worker gets in addition to the money wages from a job are also added to find out what is the real wage. For example, if a worker is getting free education for his children, he is getting free accommodation, or he is getting free medical facilities, free recreational facilities, all these add to his real wage, the money wages remain unaffected. Now we will see what are the factors affecting real wage rate. Number one is price level. Price level affects real wages. We can find out that as the prices increase in the economy, purchasing power of money falls. With the same money, we can buy less amount of goods and services. So real wages decrease with the rise in prices, and naturally real wages will rise with the fall in the price level. Actually, real wage can be found out by WR, or real wage is equal to money wage divided by the price index. So prices are very important in determining the real wages. Second is working hours. Working hours are also important in influencing the wage rate. Supposing two persons are getting the same money wages, but one worker has to work for less number of hours as compared to the other. So the person who is working for a fewer number of hours is getting more wages. For example, a lecturer has to work for 5 hours a day, and a person who is working in a company has to work for 10 hours a day. Both are getting same monetary wages. So the real wage of a lecturer are more because he is working for few hours, so he can have more layer, or the extra hours he can devote for earning more. So real wages also depend upon the number of working hours. Another can be working conditions. Working conditions are very important. The place where you are working, if it is having you can say a good atmosphere, there is light, there is good air, or cordial relations are there, or there is no dirty atmosphere, then real wages are more. But where the working conditions are bad, even the money wages may be the same, but real wages will be less. Leave facilities. You know, human beings need leave for various purposes. We don't know, we may fall ill, or sometimes we need holiday to enjoy with our family or to look after our family members. So leaves are very essential. In certain jobs, leaves are not given or they are not provided to the workers. But in some other job, you get sick leave, you get casual leave, you get earned leave. So in the companies or in the jobs where these leaves are provided, naturally the real wages would be more. So naturally, if a person is getting very large amount of the monetary wages, but he is not given any leave, so his real wages must be found by discounting his money wages. Another can be the nature of job. If the job is temporary, there is uncertainty. People have to keep on looking for other jobs. They don't know for how much time they may remain unemployed until they get another job. Real wages in such cases are less. In permanent jobs, people have job security. They are happy with even less money wages. Their real wages are more. You must have seen that in government jobs, money wages are quite less, but due to permanent jobs, workers get high real wages and are more satisfied than getting higher money wages in the private sector where jobs are contractual. Future prospects also affect the real wages. If future prospects in a job are better, for example, there is a scope for promotions and career growth, real wages increase. In the jobs where there is no scope for further promotion or for growth of the career, people are not interested in those jobs because in those jobs real wages are less. There is no hope that their wages will go on increasing. Social status is an other determinant of real wages. Social status of a job adds to the real wages. A clerk working in a government department has a higher social status as compared to a clerk working in private sector. Real wages of a government employee are more than his counterpart in non-government sector. So social status is also taken into account while finding out what are the real wages. Timely payment. Timely payment of wages also increases the real wage rate. Irregular payment of wages reduces the real wages. No doubt a person is getting, supposing, a large amount of money wages, but the payment is irregular. He does not know whether he will be getting his salary after 1 month or 2 months or 3 months. Then naturally there is uncertainty and no one likes uncertainty. So this reduces the real wage rate. Travel expenses. If the place of work is quite far from home, in this case the worker has to spend a lot on travel from home to workplace. Real wages of the workers having workplace near to their homes are higher. If the place of work is quite far away from the home, then naturally for traveling a person has to spend a lot of money. So his disposable income will fall and naturally he would be able to buy less amount of goods and services with the same money wages. So his standard of living will decline. So real wages are affected by the travel expenses of a person in a job. So if the job place is quite near to the home, it reduces the expenditure on travel and the real wages of a person increase. Possibility of extra earning is an other determinant of real wages. You know, in certain jobs, a person can earn more than what he is getting every month as a salary. In certain jobs, there is no possibility of earning more. You can see in teaching, a person can do tuition work, or he can do various other assignments like examination duties, etc., and he can earn more. Or even in hospitals, a government doctor can also do practice in the evening, so he can earn more, but this is not possible in all types of jobs. So where there are possibility of extra earnings, real wages would be more, and where there is no scope for increasing the income by having the extra facilities, so their real wages would be less. Another is the cost of training. Cost of training also affects, for certain jobs, like if you want to be a doctor, if you want to be an engineer, or if you want to be administrator and you want to do MBA from very good institute, you have to spend a lot of money on your education and training. So whatever you earn as money wages, to find out the real wages, the cost of training and education should be deducted to find out the real wages. But in some other cases, if a person has done only BA or BCom and he gets a job, so he has not spent a lot of money on getting the income or in getting a job, so here real wages may be more because he has not spent anything, or you can say he has spent less on his education and training as compared to doctor and engineer. So real wages depend upon the cost of training also. In some jobs, it is there that if a person dies, then his dependents are given jobs. In that case also, real wages will be more. But in certain jobs, no such facility is there, so their real wages are less. So this way we can find out that there are various determinants. Actually, all these things which can add to what we can buy, what we can have for our better standard of living, they must be counted whenever we want to know what are the real wages. Now we'll see why there are wage differentials. Are wages equal in all the jobs, or are wages equal for all the persons? No, it is not there. We know there are wage differentials. There are wages different for different persons, even in different jobs or even in same job. So we will see what are the causes why wages differ in different sectors or even in the same sector. So there are mainly three causes which tell us why wages differ. Number one is difference in abilities, skill and training. Workers differ in ability, skill and training. This results in wage differentials. Take the example of wages of computer engineers and unskilled workers. A lot of education and training is required to become a computer engineer. Unskilled workers don't have to spend time and money for getting education and training. So the demand for computer professional is very high, while their supply is relatively small. This is shown in figure 1. Actually, the income which is earned by computer engineers or unskilled workers also depends upon the demand and supply. Now, we have shown this in figure 1. In panel A, we have shown how the wages are determined for computer engineers, and in the panel B, we have shown the determination of wages for coal miners. And we have said that in computer engineering, persons have to spend a lot of money on education and training, which is not required for unskilled workers. In the left hand panel, you see that demand for computer engineers is very high, while their supply curve is S1, which is relatively less. This demand and supply intersect at E1. Now, wage rate is OW1 and the number of computer engineers employed is OM1. In the right hand panel B, we have shown the demand curve for unskilled labor, this is D2, and supply is S2, which is quite more. Supply of unskilled workers is more because no cost is involved for training and education. Here what you see that demand and supply intersect at E2 and wage rate determined is OW2, and it is clear from the figure that OW1 is greater than OW2. So, computer engineers get more wages and coal miners workers who are unskilled, they are getting lower wages because of the difference in ability, because of the difference in cost of education and training, and that is the reason for differences in the wages. They are not the same. You must have experienced that computer engineers are getting the highest salaries in the present day scenario because they need a skill and their demand is more but their supply is less. So that is why they are paid more. Second is the reason differences in jobs or occupations, and this explains compensating wage differentials. Another important cause of wage differential is the difference in the nature of job. Some jobs are more dangerous, risky and dirty than others. For example, jobs for miners in coal mines are quite dangerous. A blast or some other accident can cause even one's life. So the workers working in coal mines are paid more than workers in other industries like textile industries where there is no risk for life. Coal workers get 25% more wages than the textile workers in USA. In this case, the reason for difference in wage rates lies on the supply side. We have shown this in figure 2. You know, in coal mines there is more danger. So what do you see here? In this diagram we have shown number of workers on x-axis and wage rate is shown on y-axis. DD is the demand curve for both type of workers, whether they are working in coal mines or they are working in the textile industry. So far as supply of coal workers is concerned, this is S2. This is less. Because of the dangerous atmosphere there or because of the greater risk involved in the coal mines, supply of workers is less. Less workers are willing to work in coal mines, and so far as the textile industry is concerned, we see that this supply curve is S1. Here the supply is more because no risk is involved in the textile industry. There is no risk of life as it is there in coal mines. So you can see that supposing we take the case of supposing wage rate is OW1, at this wage the supply of workers in coal mines is less and supply of workers in textile industry is more. So you can see how the wage rate is determined according to demand and supply. In case of coal mines, DD and S2 intersect each other at E2. So the number of workers is ON2 in the coal mines and wage rate is OW2. While in case of textile industry, supply curve is S1, demand curve is the same. So the both curves are intersecting at E1 and we get the wage rate OW1, while the demand and supply is ON1. So what you see here, that the wage rate is more in case of coal mines and it is less in case of textile industry. The reason is the nature of job, because of the greater risk to life and because of not a good atmosphere in coal mines, they are paid higher wages. So nature of job also affects the wage rate and is the cause of wage differentials. You will see wherever there is more risk, then wages would be higher. Or even we can see that if in a construction site, the laborers who are working on the, you can say, upper stories where there is more risk to life, they must be paid higher wages as compared to the workers who are working on the ground level. So this also is the reason for differences in the wages. And this difference in wages, it can be called that it is for compensating the workers. Here you have seen that higher wage rate is paid to coal miners to compensate them for bearing higher risk in coal mines. Similarly, in developed countries, sanitation workers are paid higher wages than clerical workers because of the dirty and unpleasant nature of the sanitation work. Wage differences arising due to more dangerous, more dirty, more harsh climate, higher cost of living are called compensating wage differentials. Thus, compensating wage differential shows that higher wages must be paid to the workers to compensate them for undesirable job characteristics. Another reason is institutional factors causing imperfect labor market conditions. Labor market becomes imperfect due to institutional factors such as discrimination on the basis of sex, race and color of the skin. In USA, black workers, Negroes are generally paid less wages than the white workers for the same type of work on account of discriminations practiced between them. Women are paid less than men for the same work in India and in many other countries. Similarly, in several parts of India, rural workers belonging to scheduled class and scheduled tribe categories are paid less than high caste workers. There are some other causes of wage differential. One is ignorance. Some workers are unaware of the current wage rate. They are paid less. Due to ignorance, there are differences in wage rate. Then there is role of trade unions. In certain industries, trade unions are very strong and they succeed in getting higher wages for the workers. Immobility of factors of production is also one of the reasons. Some workers don't leave their places, so they are paid less than those who move to distant places where wages are high. Then there are differences in natural abilities. Even in the same occupation, wages differ due to difference in natural abilities. Workers who are more able and efficient are paid higher wages. Differences in non-monetary benefits such as job satisfaction, pleasant atmosphere, freedom to choose one's work schedules are some other factors which cause differences in wage rate. So dear students, this was about the different concepts of wages and why wages differ in the same occupation or in different industries. Thank you.
With this note, thank you ma'am, thank you so very much. And dear friends, we would like to tell you all that your comments, your feedbacks are very important for us, so that we can improve our lectures, so that we can introduce and we could conduct more and more sessions for you on the various topics. So keep writing us at info.cc@nic.in. We would be meeting again tomorrow and would be conducting 28th lecture in the series on microeconomics. Till then, take care, goodbye. Our email ID is info.cc@nic.in. Thank you ma'am, thank you so very much.